got married in June 2006, and barely 4 months into our marriage, my addictions that I'd done really nothing about blew our marriage to smithereens, and I went into the Betty Ford Center.
For years, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban were the picture of Hollywood perfection, a glamorous couple who seemed untouchable. Their red carpet smiles and loving gestures painted a storybook romance. But behind those dazzling smiles, cracks had begun to form. And now, Nicole has finally broken her silence. In a stunning revelation, she has exposed a secret she says nearly destroyed her marriage from within. As news of their divorce shakes the entertainment world, fans wonder, what truly went wrong between them? What darkness hid beneath their fairy tale life? Let's uncover the truth behind the secret Nicole Kidman finally revealed. From the outside, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban were the embodiment of elegance and harmony. When they appeared hand in hand at award shows, their eyes seemed to tell a love story too perfect to be real. She, the Oscar-winning actress whose poise defined grace. He, the charismatic country star adored for his soulful lyrics. Together, they appeared invincible, a beacon of celebrity devotion in an industry known for heartbreak. But as insiders now reveal, the foundation of that glamour was built on carefully managed appearances, silent compromises, and an emotional distance that deepened with each passing year. In the early days of their marriage, Keith's open admiration for Nicole was touching. He called her his muse, his saving grace, and often credited her for helping him through his early battles with addiction. Nicole, ever the pillar of composure, stood by him during those fragile years, shielding him from scrutiny and offering the quiet strength that defined her. Yet behind the smiles, the red carpets, and the public declarations of love, small fissures began to spread. Those close to the couple describe a tension between love and loneliness. Nicole yearning for a sense of emotional intimacy that fame could never fill, while Keith became increasingly consumed by the chaos of his touring life. Nicole's world was one of control, structure, and subtlety, shaped by decades under Hollywood's unrelenting spotlight. Keith's world, on the other hand, thrived on noise, spontaneity, and the adrenaline of the stage. Two lives lived in different rhythms, one craving stillness, the other chasing movement, inevitably began to collide. Slowly, the couple drifted into parallel existences, united by image, but separated by need. Friends now say Nicole hid her pain behind her polished grace, convincing herself that every marriage endured its storms. But deep within, she felt a quiet ache, an intuition that something vital between them had faded, replaced by performance and routine. The illusion held for years, shimmering under the lights of cameras and fame. But as time would reveal, no amount of glamour could conceal the truth forever. The illusion was perfect, until it wasn't. The revelation didn't come in an explosive argument or a tabloid headline. It arrived quietly, like a shadow slipping beneath the door of Nicole Kidman's carefully curated life. It was the kind of truth that doesn't scream. It whispers, settling deep into the bones until it can no longer be ignored. According to insiders, the discovery was private and deeply personal, something so unexpected that it forced Nicole to question not only her marriage, but the very foundation of the love she thought she understood. Keith Urban's charm had always been his shield, his disarming smile capable of silencing any rumor. But this time, what Nicole uncovered wasn't about addiction, fame, or the pressures of celebrity. It was something far more intimate, something that struck at the core of trust itself. For years, she had defended him. Even when quiet whispers hinted at emotional manipulation, control, and subtle power struggles within their marriage, Nicole brushed them aside. She believed in loyalty, in standing by the man she loved through storms and scrutiny alike. But everything changed when a close friend reportedly showed her messages, proof of deceit she could no longer rationalize away. The realization didn't erupt in anger. Instead, it unfolded in silence, leaving her frozen with the weight of understanding that her loyalty had, perhaps, blinded her to the truth all along. Those close to Nicole describe a haunting shift in her demeanor during this period. The actress who once radiated calm began to fade behind her own composure. On set, she remained flawless, her performances more emotionally charged than ever. But offset, her silence spoke louder than any words could. She moved through her days with a kind of fragile stillness, carrying a secret that gnawed at her soul. Keith sensed the change. There were promises, apologies, and teary confessions meant to patch what had already shattered. But for Nicole, something essential had been lost. The trust she once held so fiercely could not be resurrected by words alone. When she finally chose to reveal what she knew, it wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of survival. The secret had already broken her once. Speaking it aloud, she realized, was the only way to begin again. It was on the road where Keith Urban's real life unfolded, far from the cameras, the interviews, and the picture-perfect love story the world believed in. To his fans, touring represented passion and artistic commitment, the life of a man who lived for his music. But to Nicole Kidman, those endless nights on the road became the silent wedge that grew between them. Each tour meant another stretch of empty days and lonely nights, and every homecoming brought back a version of Keith that felt increasingly unfamiliar. The man she had once known as gentle and grounded now seemed restless, detached, and haunted by a darkness he refused to name. Behind the closed doors of his tour bus, Keith's world ran on adrenaline. There were nights of celebration that blurred into chaos, crowded after-parties, fleeting connections, and a constant hum of temptation that followed fame like a shadow. Nicole had once understood that rhythm. She knew the seduction of attention, the exhaustion of performance, the cost of stardom. But the distance between understanding and acceptance widened with every mile he traveled. According to one insider, Nicole began to notice small cracks, stories that didn't align, unexplained absences, moments when Keith's tenderness felt staged rather than sincere. When she confronted him, she didn't shout. She asked quietly for truth. But Keith's answers wavered between guilt and denial, remorse and justification. He swore that his devotion hadn't changed, that the woman he came home to was still his anchor. Yet the whispers that followed him from city to city painted another picture. Rumors of flirtations, late-night calls, and secrets guarded too tightly to be innocent. Friends say Nicole began to retreat into herself, replaying conversations and promises that once made her feel safe. Nights stretched into long silences, and the woman who had been his fiercest supporter became the one most wounded by his choices. The emotional chasm between them was no longer something distance could explain. It had become something far deeper, something irreparable. By the time Keith returned from his final major tour before their separation, Nicole had already made her decision. The man standing before her wasn't her husband anymore, just a stranger wearing the same smile, carrying the weight of all that had been lost. When news of Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's marital struggles began to circulate, Hollywood's Whisper network came alive. Agents, producers, and insiders traded fragments of gossip, some true, some exaggerated, but all pointed to a painful truth. Something inside that marriage had long been broken. For years, the couple had managed to conceal their private storms behind dazzling premieres and affectionate interviews. Yet within the industry, murmurs grew louder. People spoke of emotional volatility, of a love story that had turned into quiet endurance. Nicole, a woman known for her discretion, found herself at the center of conversations she never wanted. Friends described her as Grace under siege, attending events with poise even as the world speculated about her heartbreak. Her silence, once her shield, began to work against her. Every gesture, every word was analyzed, and soon the whispers transformed into headlines. The actress, who had always protected her privacy, was now forced to live through the collapse of her marriage beneath the blinding light of fame. But behind the gossip, a deeper reality lingered, one of quiet pain and restraint. Insiders reveal that Nicole had confided in only a few trusted friends about the truth of Keith's alleged actions. She feared not for her reputation, but for the emotional toll the exposure might take on her family. Keith's defenders painted him as misunderstood, a man struggling with fame's pressures. Nicole's supporters, meanwhile, saw her as a survivor of manipulation masked as affection. As the whispers grew into a roar, Nicole made a choice that stunned Hollywood. She would no longer protect the illusion. Her voice, once gentle and measured, began to sharpen. In private meetings and interviews, she hinted at truths too heavy to name outright. And in doing so, she began reclaiming her story from the rumor mill. It was a quiet evening in Nashville when the facade finally shattered. Nicole Kidman had just returned from filming overseas, exhausted but determined to repair what remained of her marriage. Keith Urban was home from tour, surrounded by the echoes of his own fame, platinum records on the walls, gifts from fans, and a silence that felt heavier than applause. That night, Nicole stumbled upon what would end every illusion she had fought to preserve. The discovery was not loud or dramatic, it was digital. A series of messages, hidden but not deleted, each one pulling her deeper into disbelief. Those close to Nicole recall the moment vividly. She didn't scream, didn't rage. She sat in stillness, reading every line, her hands trembling. The man who had promised transparency had been living a double narrative, weaving words of affection with actions that betrayed them. In that instant, Nicole realized their marriage was no longer a sanctuary. It had become a performance for the world. When she confronted him, Keith's initial reaction wasn't denial, it was weariness. He confessed to the mistakes but insisted they were born from loneliness, not malice. Nicole, heartbroken yet composed, listened in silence. There were tears, apologies, and desperate vows to start anew. But something inside her had already closed. The emotional trust, once their foundation, had been irrevocably broken. That night marked the end of love as Nicole knew it. It wasn't the infidelity alone. It was the years of self-sacrifice, the quiet endurance, the belief that her silence could save them. As dawn broke over their Tennessee home, Nicole made the decision that would change everything. She would no longer hide behind the illusion of perfection. The night everything changed became the night she reclaimed herself. The announcement came without spectacle. No bitter press releases, no public confrontation. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban simply released a joint statement confirming their separation, citing irreconcilable differences. But behind those diplomatic words lay years of emotional erosion, secrets, and silent despair. Hollywood reacted with shock, the media spinning narratives of betrayal and exhaustion, while those closest to Nicole knew it was the culmination of a battle she'd fought quietly for far too long. Privately, the divorce was anything but calm. Negotiations over assets, custody arrangements, and reputational damage became a delicate dance of power and restraint. Nicole, fiercely protective of her children and her privacy, avoided legal theatrics. Keith, on the other hand, struggled to manage the fallout as his name became entangled in stories of manipulation and mistrust. Their lawyers worked behind closed doors, but fragments of truth leaked out. A contested property here, a disagreement over finances there, each piece painting a picture of a relationship frayed beyond repair. Sources say Nicole's patience had finally reached its breaking point. The secret she'd uncovered, and the loneliness that followed, had convinced her there was no turning back. Friends describe her as calm yet resolute during the proceedings, determined to preserve her dignity even as her heart fractured. Keith, for his part, reportedly expressed deep regret, but by then, remorse came too late. When the divorce was finalized, Nicole's public statement was brief and poignant. Some stories must end for new ones to begin. It was not bitterness that defined her words, but release, a quiet acknowledgement of a chapter closed. Behind the glamour, behind the shadows, two people who once believed in forever had finally reached their end. The fairy tale had dissolved, but in its ashes, Nicole found something far more powerful: freedom. In the weeks following the divorce, Nicole Kidman vanished from the public eye. Her team issued no statements, and her social media fell silent. But insiders whispered that the actress wasn't retreating, she was rebuilding. Those close to her say she spent days in quiet reflection, returning to her spiritual practices, journaling, and leaning on a close circle of confidants who had seen her at her most fragile. It wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about rediscovering herself after years of compromise and control. For Nicole, reckoning didn't mean vengeance. It meant truth. When she finally returned for a magazine interview months later, her words carried a calm but chilling clarity. "You can love someone deeply and still lose yourself trying to hold them together," she said. It was a line that resonated across the world, hinting at pain without naming it, power without cruelty. The interview confirmed what many suspected. She had endured far more than the public ever knew. Friends say Nicole began pouring her emotions into her craft again. Each role she accepted after the divorce reflected shades of her own journey: strength, vulnerability, liberation. She no longer played characters defined by love alone, but women who rose through their own storms. Hollywood took notice. Her performances grew rawer, more haunting, more real. Keith, meanwhile, struggled to rebuild his image. Nicole's silence had spoken louder than the accusation ever could. She didn't need to name his secret. The emotional gravity of her story was enough. By the time she appeared at her first red carpet event post-divorce, dressed in understated elegance and radiating serenity, one truth had become undeniable. Nicole Kidman had not been destroyed by her pain. She had been remade by it. Keith Urban's silence didn't last long. As Nicole Kidman's quiet strength drew admiration worldwide, the country star found himself cornered by speculation. His fans demanded answers. Tabloids painted him as the villain. Eventually, Keith broke his silence, releasing an emotional statement through his representatives. It was a calculated balance of remorse and self-defense. "No marriage is perfect," he said, "and ours was no exception. I will always love and respect Nicole." But behind those polished words lay frustration. He felt his image slipping beyond his control. Sources close to Keith revealed his growing bitterness over the public sympathy Nicole received. He saw her as the master of subtle narrative, shaping perception without open accusation. Determined to reclaim his side of the story, he began addressing the rumors in interviews, describing the emotional pressures of fame and the strain of balancing love with a demanding career. "I made mistakes," he admitted, "but not the ones people think." His tone walked the fine line between confession and denial. For many observers, Keith's counterstrike seemed desperate. Each statement, each public gesture, only fueled more questions. His concerts became emotionally charged, his voice cracking when he sang about redemption and regret. Fans could feel his pain, yet they also sensed guilt woven through his words. Meanwhile, Nicole remained unshaken. She refused to engage in a public feud, allowing Keith's responses to echo unanswered. Her silence once again became her shield, transforming her into a symbol of grace under fire. The more he tried to control the story, the clearer it became who had truly found peace. Keith's counterstrike might have been intended to repair his reputation, but instead, it underscored a deeper truth. He had lost not just his marriage, but the woman who had once believed he could change. In the aftermath of heartbreak, Nicole Kidman did something extraordinary. She didn't hide, she didn't retaliate, and she didn't let her pain define her. Instead, she transformed it. While the media dissected every word of her past, Nicole began crafting a new narrative, one of strength, self-ownership, and renewal. Friends say she approached life with a calm conviction, determined to reclaim her identity outside the shadow of her marriage. The woman who had once been described as graceful but guarded now radiated quiet defiance. Her career surged again, not because of scandal, but because of authenticity. Every character she portrayed reflected pieces of her journey: grief, courage, rediscovery. Directors praised her for performances that felt lived in, raw, and unflinchingly human. Audiences connected with her like never before. Nicole was no longer the image of Hollywood perfection. She was real, flawed, and powerful, and that made her unstoppable. In interviews, she spoke little about Keith, choosing reflection over resentment. "Life teaches you," she said softly in one rare comment. "Sometimes what breaks you also builds you." Those words captured everything: the heartbreak, the healing, the quiet power that followed. While Keith continued his tours and public appearances, the world's attention shifted. Nicole's resilience became the story. She emerged as a symbol of dignity in a culture obsessed with drama, showing that strength isn't loud, it's enduring. Years from now, people may forget the details of their divorce, the rumors, and the pain. But they will remember how Nicole Kidman rose from the wreckage of her own heartbreak, not as a victim of love, but as a woman who chose herself. Her story was never about loss, it was about reclamation. And in that, Nicole found the freedom she had always deserved. Nicole Kidman's story is more than a tale of heartbreak. It's a testament to resilience, truth, and rebirth. She walked through betrayal and emerged stronger, redefining herself beyond fame and love. Her voice, once silenced by loyalty, now echoes with power. What she lost in marriage, she gained in freedom and self-worth.